Hey, what is up, mortals? It is Charlie Rowen here, and before we get into today's video, there's something I'd like to say. I'd like to let you all know that we have a merch store. Some of the items in it are only available for a limited amount of time, so if you're interested, go into the description and check it out. Each purchase helps us make more content. Secondly, if this video hits 300 likes by the end of the week, we will continue this What If. Thirdly, if you didn't know, only 41.3% of you guys are subscribed to us, so please hit that subscribe button and click the bell icon. Now with that out of the way, let's get into the story. In what felt like a flash, the short hiatus between the end of his middle school career and the beginning of his future at UA came and went. It was mostly uneventful, primarily consisting of exercising, spending time with Midoriya, and a small handful of other friends. And, most importantly, growing his bond with All Might. While he had denied the man the ability to pass down his quirk, he had accepted his later offer to give him some advice. What became increasingly more imperative for Bakugou, though, was obtaining a signed piece of All Might merchandise to proudly present to Izuku. Not as a boast, however, but as a gift to his friend and a symbol of their bond. At this point, though, Bakugou was a relatively withdrawn and emotionally unavailable young man. He considered Midoriya something akin to a brother. Bakugou wanted to show him that, even if he didn't seem like he cared, he appreciated their relationship. The afternoon before class was set to begin, Bakugou found himself making headway towards his friend's apartment, an autograph and a signed All Might hoodie tucked into the bag he had strapped onto his back. The boy kept his cool, but internally he was beaming. It had taken no convincing at all to get the memorabilia from his newfound mentor, and now the young man could only imagine the look on his friend's face when he was presented with the gift. Only a few more minutes rested between the grand reveal, and though he wouldn't admit it aloud, Bakugou was absolutely fired up. Bakugou thumped the ball of his middle knuckle against the surface of the door, desperately trying to veil his excitement before someone came to open it. When it swung ajar, a smiling Midoriya presented himself.
"Hey, Kachan, took you long enough,"
he remarked, casual and upbeat. He gestured for Bakugou to enter, and he did so. The young man kicked off his shoes and stepped into the entryway of the apartment.
"I wasn't late,"
he replied. Bakugou presented his usual frigid demeanor. Izuku could tell something was awry.
"Are you alright, Kachan?"
Midoriya questioned, sauntering through the threshold that led to his living room. The blonde-haired teen followed suit.
"You sound a bit strange." "Screw it,"
he muttered, tugging the bag off of his back and tossing it onto the dining room table.
"It's yours. Take a look."
He stuffed his hands into his pockets and stood to one side of the bag, giving the green-haired adolescent space to investigate.
"I don't remember giving you that bag."
Midoriya chuckled nervously, rubbing the back of his neck.
"It's not the bag, dumbass. I got you something."
Bakugou groaned at his friend's naivety. Sometimes he was a bit of an airhead. Hearing that, Midoriya quickly took a seat in front of the drawstring number and immediately opened it up, rummaging through the contents. The coat was the first thing he pulled out, automatically taking note of the fact that it was signed. That shock was quickly eclipsed by the personalized note that rested at the bottom of the bag. "To Izuku Midoriya, an amazing future hero," it read. All Might's signature was emblazoned at the bottom of it. The Viridian-haired boy mouthed out the phrase with tears in his eyes. He looked up at Bakugou with a massive grin.
"Oh, how did you get me this?"
he murmured, still fighting the tears of joy in his eyes.
"Nah, don't worry about it. A family friend knows him."
He lied. All Might had asked him to keep their teacher-student relationship a secret, even if it was only an occasional interaction. Midoriya launched up from his chair, smothering Bakugou with a big hug. All the atomic blonde returned was a brief pat on the back.
"Thank you so much, Kachan. This is the best thing anyone's ever given me."
He withdrew from the hug after a handful of seconds.
"Please tell me you at least got something from him yourself, though." "Yeah, I got something too. Don't worry about it. Now quit your damn crying and let's go play some video games."
His delivery was obtuse at best, but Midoriya was far more accustomed to that than any other. The morning after took the form of an inconsequential, chaotic blur of tired bathing, frantic dressing, and various encouragements and backhanded compliments thrown by his mother and father respectively. With a determined glint in his ruby irises and an unending ignition of pride in his soul, the young man began his march towards his providence. The open courtyard he imagined so frequently felt ever so near that morning, and it caused his lips to part into a satisfied smirk. He had prevailed, and now Bakugou would reap what he had sowed. The young man's countenance was cool and unaffected as he passed the threshold to the practical mecca of hero learning establishments. In reality, he was in absolute awe of it, especially now that that it was sparked to life by a litany of students from all backgrounds, a stomping ground for the future, a potent symbology that was sure to persuade All Might that, if he were to retire, everything would be okay. That's what the young boy's thoughts dwelled on before entering the school, and he hadn't shaken that comforting idea by the time he reached the entrance to his classroom. Class 1A stood there in all of its glory, a beacon of light directing Bakugou towards his promising future. He was the first student to enter the annals of UA history without a quirk, and he had scored top of the newcomers to boot. Bakugou wouldn't let that chip rest on his shoulder, though. He had to keep his vision pointed ahead if he wanted to keep up with the other young hopefuls. All this stirred in his brain until a petite finger tapped him on the shoulder. He turned to face Ochako Uraraka, the girl he had saved during the entrance exam. "I thought it was you!" she gushed, a warm smile spreading across her face. "Hi! Are you in 1A too?" She was far more bubbly and sweet than he had expected. Bakugou hadn't gotten to interact with her much after the test, only exchanging a couple of words before she was whisked away by the nurse recovery girl to treat her wounds. The blonde was taken aback by her infectious energy.
"Yeah, I am,"
he replied. Bakugou stared down at her with a fiery glare, though he didn't mean to. She seemed a little intimidated by the way she retreated from his gaze. Realizing this, the blonde offered a small smile. The tension melted away immediately as she returned it in full. "Well, I'm glad I'm already friends with a classmate then," she beamed, revealing more of her bubblegum positivity. Bakugou could feel himself splitting away from his unapproachable shell little by little the more he was around her. Soon enough, 2 more 1A students flanked either side of them, one being the tall young man with the engines in his legs, and the other being Midoriya.
"Hey, Kanchan!"
he called down from the end of the hallway as soon as they made eye contact. Midoriya rushed over to his friend as quickly as possible, Ida following shortly after. He didn't exchange any across-the-hall pleasantries before approaching, however. Uraraka gave Bakugou a side-eyed glance at Izuku's use of his childhood nickname. "That's a cute nickname," she told him. "Did you come up with it?" She nudged him with her elbow a bit.
"No, it's something that dumbass came up with when we were kids."
His choice of words were crude, but his overall message felt familiar. They obviously had a storied, mostly positive past. Both of them finally reached Uraraka and Bakugou by the time he wrapped up his sentence.
"You're the Quirkless student, aren't you?"
Ida questioned immediately, blunted and narrow in his tone.
"Yeah, I am."
Bakugou tucked his hands into his pockets and slumped his shoulders. This guy seemed like a real stickler.
"That's very impressive. Your score was immaculate for someone without any abilities whatsoever. I admire your wherewithal."
Though he was well-meaning, something about what he said rubbed Bakugou the wrong way.
"You don't need a damn quirk to get through, Four Eyes,"
he barked. Ida responded by glowering at the shorter man.
"Get into class."
The interaction was cut short by a tired, haggard voice coming from somewhere close to the floor. The 4 students turned to face the origin of the sound, finding a scruffy man tucked into a muted yellow sleeping bag. His thin lips were glued to the spigot of a package of applesauce. A swath of raven black hair hung in strands down his face. By all accounts, he looked like a bum. The man sprouted from his cocoon and stood, slinging the sleeping bag over his shoulder loosely.
"Now."
The 4 students obliged immediately, filing in one after one with increasing rapidity. They took their seats, the last 4 left vacant, and stared up at the front to realize that the ratty-looking man they had just seen slithering around on the floor in a beat-up, threadbare bedroll was their homeroom teacher. Most were confused by this, as they had never seen this pro-hero before. Midoriya was already murmuring to himself, trying to determine who it was to no avail. He just hadn't studied hard enough, it seemed.
"Hello, I'm Shota Aizawa. I'm your homeroom teacher."
His tone was uninspired. It was as if he had barely gotten any sleep within the last month. He pointed a thumb at a stack of boxes in the back corner of the room.
"Those are your gym uniforms. Dig the one with your name labeled on it out. Use the bathrooms down the hall to change into them, and meet me in the field in 10 minutes. Don't slack off."
With that, he strolled out of the classroom with his fist tucked into his pockets. The sophomores found themselves outside at the creeping hours of the spring morning. The sun had barely reached its quarter point in the sky, and they were already doing their first batch of athletics for the year. Some were disheartened, some were indifferent. Most of the students, as they should be, were excited to present what they could do. Bakugou was especially fired up, already hopping on the balls of his feet and stretching out his taut physique. He rolled his neck to and fro, rotated his shoulders in their joints, and always kept his focus forward. He wasn't sure what was to come, but he was not about to disappoint. Mediocrity wasn't part of his modus operandi.
"All right, I've decided to put you all through a gauntlet of strenuous exercise. Consider this a Quirk aptitude test meant to test not only your physical might, but also your rational thinking and creative application."
He scratched at his scruff.
"Oh yeah, whoever scores the lowest is getting expelled."
The class immediately gasped in shock. Fearful murmurs spread like a miasma from the epicenter of their group. Bakugou glared daggers into the teacher. Expel a student so early? That was egregious. It was downright foul. What gave this ratty bastard the right to nullify all the hard work every one of them had to produce to get there? He almost worked up the anger to speak up against their teacher, but Aizawa was quick to cut it off.
No more whining. I'll have our top contender go first just to set a precedent. Gatsuki Bakugou, would you please come up to the plate?
Bakugou huffed and followed his orders, begrudgingly marching to the plate. Aizawa presented him with a ball.
What was your maximum pitch in middle school?
He asked, his voice dull and sullen.
129 meters.
Aizawa cocked his head at that number.
That's quite the number, kid. Let's see if you can do better this time around.
He didn't even mention that Bakugou was quirkless. That surprised the blonde teen. Channeling the utmost force he could possibly muster up, Bakugou took a decisive step back, brought his arm to the rear, and launched the ball at breakneck pace. The sphere split the air with a slight crack, informing the bystander just how much raw power was put behind the throw. It whizzed through the air for several seconds until it landed near the end of the field. The measuring device let out a series of beeps before Aizawa revealed the screen to the team. It read 209 meters.
Good work, kid.
Though still seemingly exhausted, Aizawa looked exceedingly impressed. The rest of the students worked their way through the pitching, most scoring far below Bakugou, though some, Uraraka and Midoriya especially, dwarfed the blonde's score. Midoriya enthusiastically explained his quirk, telekinesis, to the class before floating the ball away exactly a kilometer, his maximum range. Uraraka, using her gravity manipulation, launched it out into practically the stratosphere. At the end of the event, Bakugou sat comfortably at 4th place behind Uraraka, Midoriya, and a student that had gotten in on recommendations by the name of Shoto Todoroki. Out of everyone in the student body, Todoroki's quirk was one of the first the blonde-haired boy had been acquainted with that he had no real way to counter. Dealing with such intensity and raw damage would be borderline suicide for the quirkless young man. He toiled over this unfortunate fact as they moved to the next event, the 50-meter dash. Bakugou barely paid attention to the first few sets of runners, instead focusing on personal introspection. This was his first mountain to scale. Before long, it was his turn, along with Izuku. It took a gentle tapping on his shoulder from the green-haired boy to bring him out of his daze.
You alright, Kachan?
Midoriya questioned, his voice rife with concern. Bakugou rolled his shoulder to remove Izuku's hand from it.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
The blonde grumbled quietly. They both lined up at the start, Midoriya flashing a smile and giving his friend a thumbs up before he did something peculiar. Kneeling down, the freckle-faced teen untied his shoe and removed it from his foot. He stood tall once more, comfortably digging his sneaker into the small of his back. Bakugou gave him a subtle nod. As Aizawa ordered them to start, Midoriya hopped into the air and launched forward at a rapid pace. The blonde was stunned for a split second before catching up and outclassing his comrade almost immediately. Midoriya's use of telekinesis was strategically sound and quite clever, but the sheer athletic capabilities of Bakugou left him in the dust. Their scores clocked in at 3.6 seconds for the quirkless blonde and 4.8 seconds for the green-haired telekinetic. Each of the subsequent events drew to a close without any fail, with Bakugou scoring toward the top in nearly all of them. The culmination of it all placed the young man at a solid 6th place in the course, and put his lifelong friend at 18th, too close for comfort in his eyes. The failed member of the class was none other than Minoru Mineta, the grape-headed dwarf that Bakugou had yet to speak to. From what he had seen of his behavior gave him the impression that the short stack was quite the salacious individual. He made a fuss, sure, but by the end of the class period, the raunchy little man had been successfully escorted off of the premises. Before we get back into the story, I would like to say that we've got a second channel called Anime Deep Dive. Anime Deep Dive goes over the hard facts of the anime presented. Now, in case you guys didn't know, we have a third channel called Anime Theory. Anime Theory mainly focuses on a large variety of mind-boggling anime theories. If you are interested in content like this, please go check the description below, or click the eye icon in the top right corner. Now with that out of the way, let's get back into the story. The remainder of the day was brought to a close without consequence. Though unbeknownst to Bakugou, the following afternoon would be far more eventful. The young man found himself resting in his middle-of-the-day course, a wistful look in his eyes as he awaited the appearance of his next new teacher. Due to the day before being primarily quirk apprehension exams and a school-wide meeting, 1A hadn't yet been acquainted with the rest of their educators. Much to his shock, a massive man in the form of All Might busted through the door, the hero being sure to make a show of it.
Hello there, Class 1A! Are you ready to get started?
Much like their first meeting, his delivery was absolutely drenched in bravado and swagger. Every line he delivered was bold and untethered by fear or social anxiety. It was a confident proclamation of his worth. Bakugou couldn't help but silently admire the man he had grown to be friends with. Meanwhile, the remainder of the students cheered in jovial excitement. It was the #1 hero, the symbol of peace, and now he was their teacher. What a positive turn of events for the burgeoning hero course.
Welcome to Heroism 101, the most important course you will take this year.
he announced proudly. It wasn't even a question to him.
And to celebrate this momentous occasion, I would like to direct your attention to the wall over there.
With the pointing of his finger, an assortment of compartments shot forth from the depths of the far side. With each box numbered, it became increasingly clear what these were.
These are your hero costumes, made to the exact measurements and with the exact equipment you detailed in your forms.
The class, including Bakugou, eagerly jumped to their feet to take a look at what they had.
Get dressed in the bathrooms around the corner. When you're done, I'll have something to show all of you.
Bakugou had kept his costume utterly pragmatic in design. Its form factor was minimal, but the level of equipment he had designated was exactly to spec with what he needed. First and foremost was his base layer of clothes, an armored nanofiber cloth in the form of a pair of slim-fitting pants and a sleeveless shirt, as well as skin-tight arm protectors extending from mid-forearm to mid-bicep. Layered over that were simple power multipliers in the form of a pair of titanium-reinforced combat boots and flexible carbon fiber padded gloves for strengthening blunt impact. His elbows and knees were also bolstered with supplementary braces to prevent shock and stress fracturing from damaging his joints. He had jettisoned a mask, considering it too flashy for what he was going with. The entirety of his costume was black with orange accents, his favorite color combination. The entirety of the corps stepped through the threshold to the training center. The spectacle of it all wasn't lost to them. They truly felt like heroes stepping into their new lives of strife, conflict, and triumph. And none of them knew true adversity like Katsuki Bakugou. With that hardship, though, came an even more potent feeling of pride when he finally stepped through that gate, with his hero equipment adorning his muscular frame. The young man grinned blissfully at the thought of it. Oh my! That's such a cool costume! A familiar voice from his right side. He turned to see Uraraka, immediately becoming petrified at the sight of her costume. And you designed that yourself? That's so cool! I wish I'd given some better specifications on mine. It's a bit tight, she huffed, pouting a bit at the curious, unfortunate state of her uniform.
It doesn't look that bad.
It was likely the closest to words of encouragement the young man could muster up before he was flanked by Midoriya once again. His costume was a full green jumpsuit with an eared hoodie and a metallic face mask. Embellishing the uniform were several pouches of varying sizes, all housing different projectiles exploitable by his quirk.
Whoa, it looks so good, Kachan!
He remarked, giving his friend a pat on the shoulder. Bakugou shrugged it off.
I see that you went with the reinforcements I suggested. That makes me happy. Shut the hell up, Izuku. I'm trying to focus.
It was a half-hearted attempt at his bold nature. In reality, Bakugou was in far too good of a mood to hold any ill will towards anyone. This was his time to glisten like an abandoned gem in the dust and ash of a cavernous mine. He looked over to his friend, who was frowning slightly now.
You should focus too. You never know what someone as badass as All Might will order us to do. You're right. This is going to be serious business.
Midoriya steeled himself, and Uraraka nodded in agreement as well. Finally, the hero revealed himself to the class. All of them had silently resolved themselves and psychologically prepared for whatever megalithic, arduous, or stressful task was ahead of them.
Well, hello, young students. I have quite an exciting event for all of you today. We will be doing the foe hero versus villain combat training.
All Might proceeded to, still steeped in machismo and with impressive delivery, explain the specific regulations and parameters this particular exercise had. They would be split up into groups of 4, a 2 versus 2 bout with one side playing the role of villains whilst the opposite duo would play heroes. The goal of the hero team was to incapacitate or capture the opposing team or disable the bomb. As for the foes, their victory conditions are to either incapacitate the heroes or protect the warhead until the allotted time had run its course. With the team sorted, Bakugou found himself in quite the unforeseen and ill-fated matchup against the only 2 people he considered friends in the class, Uraraka and Midoriya. Not only that, but his partner was someone he had already developed a mild distaste for after a forlorn first impression. He glanced the man's way with a scornful expression, disappointed that his first true act as a hero-to-be would be playing the villain with what may be his most staunch rival in the future. They were up first, though, so there was no choice but to communicate with one another.
I'm gonna go get the bastards. Protect the bomb.
Bakugou spat, his form already disappearing into the shaded innards of the training building. Ida made an attempt to counter his statement, but he slipped away before he could do so.
He sure seems like a problem child,
Ida remarked to himself, deciding to work on getting into character. To be a UA student is to go plus ultra, even if it meant being the most despicable and vile thing he could imagine. Mustering up his best evil laugh, the iron-clad young adult began sulking around the premises of the bomb site, in hopes of catching the drop on whatever hero may slip through. It didn't take long for Bakugou to find his targets, as they were still vigilantly picking through every nook and cranny of the first floor by the time he reached them. Bakugou didn't choose to go the over-the-top route like Ida had, instead just presenting himself to the 2 with a silent, ominous air about him.
You know you can give up, right, Izuku?
Bakugou said, giving his friend a malicious smirk. Midoriya returned the smile in full.
Same to you, Kachan.
He replied confidently. He prepared himself for a fight. Withdrawing a handful of ball bearings from the holster in his belt, Bakugou tightened his fists.
You know I'll kick your ass, dork. I'm not gonna go easy.
He took a decisive step forward, specifically making sure to present his non-dominant leg. Without warning, Midoriya launched out the trio of ball bearings in all directions, like a spider using its mighty legs to sense vulnerable prey. Bakugou, with swiftness and guile never before presented by him to his friend, shrunk and slipped through the balls and began encroaching upon the hapless duo of heroes with minimal effort. As the spheres darted through the air and looped back to make contact with the blonde, Bakugou wasted no time avoiding them with expertise. His spatial awareness was immaculate, and it was certainly an advantage compared to the limited usage his friend offered with his quirk. Though he tried to present a brave face, Izuku was growing antsier by the second. Bakugou was growing far too close for comfort, covering feet of hallway with every projectile dodged. The freckle-faced boy knew that his comrade had trained his body to its upper limits, but he had never witnessed the full extent of the outcome. Before Izuku could react, Bakugou was on him like a wild dog. His attack was vicious, potent, well-executed, and dexterous. Dropping his dominant leg back, the atomic blonde delivered a crippling right straight to the jaw of his friend. There was no grandiose battle between the two, no struggle for dominance. That single blow was enough to crumple the weaker boy to the floor, rendering him unconscious. Uraraka instinctively took a step back.
You better be damn sure you want to keep this going, Uraraka.
He growled. His demeanor was far more malignant than it had been the morning before. For a moment, only a fleeting instant, the young man truly embodied the essence of a villain. "I can't do that, Bakugou! Stand down!" she demanded, raising her hands to prepare her quirk. Bakugou executed the next phase of his attack without a margin of error. He dropped low and dove in, feinting a strike to the gut to cause the young, inexperienced woman to react. She did so, bracing herself for a blow to the stomach by bringing her hands down to block it. He smirked at this instinctive knee-jerk counter, as it fit precisely into what he had in mind. Turning on his heel, Bakugou slipped behind the girl and took her back, his forearm shooting up to wrap around her throat. She shot her hands up to protect from the choke, but by the time she reached him, he had already braced his hand into the bend of his opposite elbow, a perfectly executed rear naked chokehold. Expecting that the girl would try to force him off by activating her float ability, the fiery young man hiked himself up and wrapped his legs around her hips. He was locked in place, and it only took 8 seconds to strangle the poor girl unconscious. As she slipped into her non-consensual slumber, Bakugou couldn't help but mutter an apology into her ear. He dropped his feet to the concrete and slowly lowered her to the floor. The student body was in awe. This kid was quirkless? He had just dispatched of 2 proper hero students without so much as breaking a sweat, even going as far as to lay the girl he had throttled unconscious safely onto the floor. Though he had to mask it, All Might was seriously impressed.
Hey, young Bakugou, when did you get so frickin' cool?
He muttered to himself quietly, making sure none of the other students heard him. Bakugou flashed the camera a brief thumbs up, signifying the end of the exercise. Thank you all for watching the video to the end. Now there are a few more things that I'd like to go over before the video ends. On behalf of We the Celestials, I'd like to thank the writer of this video and editors for this video. Their details will be in the description. If you're a voice actor, editor, or writer, or you're interested in becoming one of those, go to the Discord that's in the description of this video and hit up the head of one of those areas. We're always looking for members to join us. That's it from us for today's video, so thank you all for watching. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you're interested, and hit that like button if you liked the video. Until next time, peace out, mortals. Have an amazing day.